So pleased to have John Fisher, Executive Director of the Shubert, at the table. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
We're talking about 100 years of a theater in New Haven. That is huge. Started 1914 on December 11th. So does that mean there's a big to-do this year on December 11th?
We're having a season-long celebration. This is our 100th anniversary season, so we'll have a number of events throughout the years and shows. And on December 11th, we're really excited because you're hearing it here first, because we're about to announce it and go on sale later this week. We're having Patti LuPone in concert for
awesome.
the 100th, and she's going to do her wonderful show that's sort of in line with a lot of our history in that, and it's going to work out very well. And Patti, of course, was the star of Evita, and originated Evita Peron, and is probably one of the living legends of currently of Broadway, of musical theater.
Well, may it bring you a full house.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about you, John Fisher, just a minute. CAPA Vice President, you figured into the Atlanta Olympic Games, which I found very interesting. You've had a long storied career before you got to the Shubert. Can we talk about it a second?
Sure.
Give me some of the background and what you bring to the Shubert.
Yeah, prior to the Shubert, I was at the Olympics for 2 years in Atlanta, working on and planning the games. And I actually took a break from theater to some degree because I ended up working for the Athletes Village. So we housed, fed, and moved 15,000 athletes and officials in Atlanta and several other cities.
Monumental, which is good with
fun.
dealing with actors, I would assume.
Yeah, it's similar to doing theater and doing, it's a variation of not entertainment, but the sports world. Well, the Olympics are an event unto themselves, and a huge event. So it was kind of neat to do that. You sort of just added zeros to all your budgets, lots of zeros because of the size of the games. But
can only imagine.
Yeah, that was a great experience.
Being CAPA Vice President, what does that bring to the Shubert?
We've really turned the Shubert into a true performing arts center, and really broadened our role in the community. Education, we have a really wonderful partnership with the Board of Education in New Haven, and we have staff at the Cooperative Arts and Humanities High School, which is designed by Caesar Pelli, immediately next door to the
famed
Shubert.
architect.
Yep.
We're starting to look at some pictures here of 100 years of the Shubert. I got to tell you, I love the font. I love the retro. This goes back to the 40s, perhaps?
This is from the 40s. I'm trying to look, see what show it is. But this was the font during a lot of these programs. Really were from the early days, from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. They were in this particular font, and really were kind of really cool. Some of them, and it represents. Such the rich history of 600 pre-Broadway shows and 300 world premieres.
When the Shubert brothers opened up, the Shubert in New Haven, let's talk about the lean years. What were those like back in 1914 when we started out?
Well, it started out as it's always been in the early days, what we call legitimate theater, or, they did plays and they did some musicals and that, but it was really, and a lot of it's the heyday of music, the start of musical theater in this country in those times, because we've had, Yul Brynner in the world premiere of King and I. Virtually all Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals did their world premiere in New Haven.
And I don't think people remember that.
No, and it's pretty amazing. That actually Sound of Music is
Julie
there.
Andrews.
Julie Andrews, and. We've had Marlon Brando in the world premiere of Streetcar Named Desire. It's Mary Martin, South Pacific, and the list really goes on and on. And
well, let me just read.
History.
I was looking at the 50s and 60s. Henry Fonda, John Forsythe, Paul Newman, Carl Malden, Rex Harrison, Julie Andrews, Mary Martin, Ethel Merman, Jason Robards, Humphrey Bogart, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, Jimmy Stewart, Clark Gable, and Gene Kelly. Does it get any better than that?
I think we're really have a unique position in the American theater. No other theater has that rich of history. Even Broadway, there's so many theaters, so there's so much history on Broadway. But as a tryout house and as the start of this, there's an expression in theater: we bombed in New Haven, which is for shows that didn't make it to New York or that closed out of town, which there were some of. I don't remember the name of most of those because those aren't the ones that you see on that list. But it's a who's who, because everybody, in that time, anybody who was anybody, did theater, or a lot of people did. And it was also pre-television and pre. The regional theaters were not developed, and movies were around, obviously, of course. But people went to the theater, a lot, so there's that rich history there.
Shubert, birthplace of the nation's greatest hits, which is what you just referred to. As we look at more pictures and we talk about, let's hope, the next 100 years of the Shubert, what's changing? Some renovations are underway now at the theater in downtown New Haven. Where are you headed in the near future?
It's celebrate. One of our taglines is celebrating the past and building our future, or the Shubert for the next 100 years. One of the things we're doing now is, instead of mounting pre-Broadway shows, because the business has changed a lot, and the Shubert was closed for a number of years. Unfortunately, was saved back in the 70s.
What was the one thing that saved it after it closed?
I think, well, there was a resolve and drive by a number of area community leaders and the city, and a gentleman named Joel Schiavone and a number of other people who got together and really wanted to save it from the wrecking ball. It had been closed for almost 10 years, and brought it back. And I think now what we're doing for the future is also we're starting the national tours of shows. So instead of getting them before they go to Broadway, we get them as they come out of Broadway in some cases. So this year we have two shows. Peter and the Starcatcher, which has been on Broadway, a Tony Award-winning show, is starting its new tour here in January. And then we also have Matilda, which is a wonderful musical based on a book by Roald Dahl. And that's going to be here, teching, as we call it, which is putting the show together for 7 weeks. It's huge economic impact for the city and the community. We employ up to 100 local union stagehands for it, which have been in the theater, not them particularly, but them and their predecessors for 100 years. But it really is taking it to a new level. We've done it with over the last few years with Jersey Boys and a number of shows, and it's wonderful because it fills up our hotels and our restaurants, and it gets us shows that we normally wouldn't see here for a long time.
Let's talk about the physicality of the inside of the Shubert. What are folks going to see once these renovations are complete? What's going to be different?
Well, a lot of it's behind the scenes, of course, the stuff you don't see, like
more restrooms,
HVACs.
I read.
But restrooms is a big thing, which is for as anyone who goes to the theater or to a live
especially
event.
in New York City.
In New York, or even at the Shubert, we've actually added bathrooms on all levels, which we didn't have before. So that's a big improvement in terms of creature comforts and come intermission for everybody. We have new dressing rooms for the actors. The theater itself is in very good shape. It had gotten a very $500,000 paint job a couple years ago, and we've upgraded the systems and some of the support spaces and all of that too. Those areas.
We talked about a theater within a theater.
The new space. The new space is we're adding what we call black box. It's an alternate performance space. That'll be part of phase 2 coming up in the next year or two. But it'll be to do smaller shows and to do cabaret and music and a little bit of everything. But it'll give us a second space to have for rehearsals and performances and that, and more intimate fare.
As we march toward another 100 years, what is it that folks can do to keep the arts alive in New Haven and support the Shubert? What's needed?
I think it's really, we see revival, but people are, we try to do something for everybody. So we have concerts. We've expanded some of that, and so music, dance, theater. And I think, I encourage people to come out to the theater to support us. The Shubert is a not-for-profit organization, so we raise funds and get grants and all those fun things, just like everybody else in museums and orchestras and that. We have a new partnership with the New Haven Symphony. They're back in the building. We have 3 concerts this year. We just had a wonderful concert.
You had Emily Bear, and
yes,
she
and you
was.
had Emily on.
I
the
did.
show?
She's
Yeah,
awesome.
She was wonderful.
A piano prodigy.
Yeah, amazing, and her concert was absolutely phenomenal. It was wonderful. I mean, first of all, they were doing Gershwin, and
Who doesn't love this?
And yeah, it was wonderful, and it was a really good house, almost full house. So I think it was a nice way to start the symphony's return for us. So.
As executive director, proudest moment, maybe a moment that just tickled you, what jazzes you? Give me a story that maybe folks don't know about when you sit back and look at what is going on at the Shubert.
Well, I mean, all the renovations and the revitalization is wonderful, of course. So and that's coming along. The 100th anniversary is a huge thing for us, and I think lots of birthdays, and there's lots of things going on in town and that. But it's kind of. It really hits home, the 100th. So that's a really kind of a neat thing.
Can many theaters boast 100 years?
Well, this
a handful, a dozen or so.
Yeah, a handful. Maybe across the country, there's some old buildings. Some of them are not operating the way they did, or they've changed into other uses. Even there's been some of that has happened. A lot of them were torn down. I grew up in Philadelphia and had this wonderful old theater. Now, when I remember as a teenager and just in my going into college, they tore it down, and it was a beautiful old theater. And there's been, of course, New Haven's had several other theaters that we've
Sure.
lost over the years. So 100 is a big milestone, so that's important. And the other thing is doing these production work and everything is wonderful, because it really brings new shows to the Shubert and brings all the creative people into town. So it's kind of really it's really neat to watch those shows incubate here and open here. As I said, in a kind of a reverse way, instead of pre-New York, pre-Broadway, it's post-Broadway as they start their national tours. So it's kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit for us.
Well, John Fisher, proud to have you on. Proud that the Shubert is going to celebrate its centennial.
Thank
Come
you.
back anytime. And it was pointed out to me that I helped voice the 90th
Yes.
year. So now here we are, 10 more years. So we're all in this together. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ann.
Made a trivial pursuits when one this in. Who is this girl I spend all night kissing? And if Walter's right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked, found us a witch, and I found the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store of a mind, just to save time. Skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know that you need me?